HOA pitched tents in the wrong forest. Mine called it community land, sold weekend passes, and redrew my boundaries on paper. But what HOA didn't know: a former ranger never gives up ground. I brought the real law, the Dawn Raid. Legendary. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us, where are you watching from? Share in the comments below. I moved out here for the silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind of silence that lives beneath everything. The hush of tall pines, the low song of the creek sliding over stone, the stillness that settles in your chest when no one's watching you, needing something, asking anything. 12 acres. That was the dream. My own patch of forest, tucked at the edge of a pleasy town that was more spread out pasture than suburb when I bought in. I'm in my mid-40s now, but back then, I had just stepped away from a 2-decade career as a park ranger. The plan was simple: start consulting for outdoor gear companies, work remote, and spend my mornings walking the perimeter with coffee in hand and no one to interrupt the ritual. And for a while, it worked. The land was old, wooded, with a ridge on the eastern boundary that caught the sunrise like stained glass. Deer came right up to the creek. Wild turkeys roamed like they owned the place. No fences, just tree lines, natural boundaries, and the occasional posted sign I hammered into a trunk out of habit, more than need. But towns change when you're not looking. The houses started springing up on the far side of the hill, 2 years after I moved in. Quiet at first, retirees, young families. I'd wave when I passed someone on the trail, or spotted a new mailbox on the road into town. Then came the newsletters. Apparently, a homeowners association had been formed to preserve the character of the neighborhood. Strange word, neighborhood. I never thought I lived in one. It didn't take long before I got my first letter, even though I never signed a thing. Just a friendly reminder, it said, that exterior paint colors should follow the forest palette, as agreed upon by the HOA design board. I don't have neighbors in view. You'd have to hike a quarter-mile to even see my cabin. But that didn't stop them. Next came a suggestion about putting up fencing to maintain uniformity. Then a note about unregistered outbuildings. I assumed they meant my woodshed. I ignored them, at first. Then I started collecting them. The oddest part was a conversation I had with a young couple walking their dog just past the creek one morning. Said they loved the new community trails. I asked what trails. They pointed straight into my woods. You didn't know? The guy said. It's in the HOA map. This whole stretch is part of the shared forest zone. I smiled, nodded, and waited for them to pass before hiking back to my cabin and pulling out the deed. I bought this land outright. Title is clean. Surveyed twice. The boundaries are clear, down to the GPS coordinates. Still, the next day, I went to the county office and pulled the plat maps. Sure enough, the HOA's version was there, freshly filed, and someone had redrawn the lines. Half my woods had been casually absorbed into their so-called green zone. No warning, no meeting, no conversation. At first I told myself it was a mistake, a clerical error. Maybe someone scanned an old plat. But that voice in my head, the one that served me well out in the backcountry, the one that kept me alive through weather, injury, and search and rescue gone sideways. It whispered something else. This wasn't an accident. I stood out at the edge of the woods that night, flashlight off, listening. No wind, no wildlife, just the faint hiss of something crossing a line I didn't even know had been drawn. The woods were too still. Something was coming. And it was already on my land. It started with the smoke, thin and lazy, curling up through the trees like a ghost that didn't care if it was seen. I caught it just past the creek, hanging above the ridgeline where the tall spruce meet the hardwoods. At first I figured it was a stray campfire. It happens, kids wander off trail, set up for the night, leave beer cans and footprints. But I knew my woods, and I knew that fire hadn't gone out. I took the long trail in, the one I cleared myself with a machete, and a weekend's worth of blisters. The air got thick the closer I got. Not with smoke, with voices. Laughter. Music. The unmistakable rumble of an engine, then another. And then I saw it. 5 tents, one of them a full-size canvas wall tent with a collapsible stovepipe, tarps strung between trees. 2 ATVs parked in a muddy clearing I'd left untouched for years. Someone had chopped limbs, built fire pits, and even rigged a rope swing over the creek bend. I counted at least 7 people. Adults, kids, coolers and camping chairs and an actual foldable toilet seat hung over a trench. They'd brought enough to stay, not for the night, not even for the weekend. This was long haul. I didn't confront them then. I knew better than to march into a group uninvited, especially with kids around. Instead, I turned back, walked the 1.5 miles to my cabin, and grabbed the paperwork. Title, survey, coordinates, satellite overlays. By the time I reached the HOA president's door, I had a manila folder fat enough to tlaw with authority. Her name's Darlene. Mid-50s. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. All pearls and pleasantries, until you question her authority. She opened the door with a "Oh, hi there, neighbor" tone that made my molars grind. "Thought you should know," I said, holding up the folder. "There's a group camping deep in my woods. Your people, apparently. Fires, vehicles, the works." She tilted her head like I'd just told her my dog had eaten a sock. "Oh, that," she said. "Yes, it's one of our scheduled member weekends. It's part of the new Wilderness Camping Initiative. It's all in the newsletter." I blinked. "You're aware that land is mine, not HOA common area. My deed's in this folder. Survey markers are on the ground. There's no ambiguity." Her smile twitched. "That area is designated Greenbelt in our updated planning documents. It's listed as part of the shared use forest zone. You really should have come to the meetings." I opened the folder and laid out the paperwork on her porch bench. "This is a legal title. Your map is wrong." She barely looked. "Well, if you'd like to submit a formal dispute, the board meets the 3rd Thursday of every month. But for now, I'd appreciate you not disturbing paying members during their retreat." Paying. That word stuck. I narrowed my eyes. "You're charging people to camp in my woods?" She sighed, as if I were a child she was done reasoning with. "Look, you live on the fringe. You're not part of the HOA. But the community is growing, and these things get messy. We're just trying to make use of underutilized space. You're outnumbered here, you know." And there it was. Not a mistake, not a misprint, not even arrogance. A threat. I gathered my papers, said nothing, and walked away. But the heat under my collar was spreading. My boots hit the gravel like gunshots. Back at the cabin, I pulled out the old forestry maps. Cross-referenced every inch. Their so-called greenbelt bled straight into my property, and theirs wasn't even filed correctly with the county. They weren't just ignoring my ownership, they were erasing it. That night, I stood in the dark again. Same place by the creek. I could see the glow of the fire through the trees. I heard voices, someone playing guitar, someone cursing about running out of propane. I didn't feel anger, I felt calculation. Because now I knew this wasn't overreach. It was a coordinated move. One they thought I was too quiet or too alone to push back on. They didn't realize I've spent half my life walking boundaries other men didn't even know existed. And they'd just crossed mine. The town hall meeting wasn't exactly advertised. Buried at the bottom of the HOA's seasonal bulletin, printed in cursive font, no less, was a line that caught my eye. Upcoming community planning session, Thursday 6 p.m., Legacy Pines Rec Center. No agenda, no Zoom link, no fanfare. That alone made it suspicious. I showed up early, dressed like I had no business being there. Ball cap low, beat-up vest, clipboard in hand. The type of guy people ignore because they assume he's fixing the plumbing. I sat in the back, silent, invisible. The room was full of polished smiles and self-importance. Folding chairs, coffee carafes, printouts nobody actually read. At the front, Darlene, HOA president. And beside her, a man I hadn't seen before, slick suit, tan even in winter, realtor charm bleeding out of every pore. That was Todd Wexler, HOA vice president. And, as I would soon learn, a licensed real estate broker with a taste for transformational community living spaces. They kicked things off with small talk updates on fencing guidelines, mailbox paint standards, a brief spat about dog leash enforcement. And then Todd took the mic. "I'm thrilled to announce Phase 2 of our long-term vision," he said. "Legacy Pines Wilderness Commons. A shared-use eco-retreat space that brings our residents closer to nature while enhancing property values for everyone involved. The projector clicked on. There it was. A map, not the one I had. This version showed Common Zone B stretching directly into my woods, just like the campers had said. The shared forest, picnic sites, tent zones, an actual welcome center flagged near the creek bed. I felt my chest tighten. They hadn't just claimed it. They had planned it. Todd kept going, pitching it like a sales webinar. We've partnered with an online booking platform for managed access. Each family can reserve up to 2 nights per month for a nominal maintenance fee. Totally sustainable, totally secure. He even winked. Nominal fee. Translation: they were charging rent on land they didn't own. I flipped through the printouts left at the back of the room. Page 13. That's where it hit. Zone B, shared use forest area, mapped according to revised Greenbelt expansion, filed with county record on June 3rd. I didn't recognize the file number, but I wrote it down. After the meeting, I slipped out without a word. Nobody noticed. They weren't worried about ghosts. They thought I was a shadow. The next morning, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. It took some charm and a $20 fee, but I got my hands on the map they file. Same coordinates, same lines. But one detail stood out. The filing had been marked Community-Led Initiative, not HOA certified, which meant they bypassed proper review by labeling it a neighborhood improvement plan, technically legal, but functionally deceptive. The only signature on the filing, Todd Wexler. And here's the kicker. Attached was a projected revenue sheet showing annual camping income estimates. It wasn't about nature. It was about profit. They were turning my sanctuary into a product. That night, I sat at my desk and stared at the documents. My deed, their map, my survey, their fantasy. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft in a necktie. They didn't ask, didn't negotiate, didn't even warn me. They just built me out of my own forest with a pen and some printer ink. And while they toasted marshmallows in my trees, they were cashing in behind the scenes. Betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it shows up in an Excel spreadsheet. And I just found the formula they didn't want me to see. I can't act without evidence of unlawful use, she said. But if you can document active trespass and structure use, we can initiate a joint operation with the county. That include ATVs, waste, fires, anything you can record. Copy that. I spent the next 48 hours stringing motion-activated trail cams along the ridgeline and around the main clearing. Bought a half-dozen solar-powered boundary sensors that pinged my phone if movement crossed the invisible property line. Didn't take long. Friday afternoon, 2 SUVs rolled in. License plates caught Saturday, more tents. Sunday, a profane grill. Then came the familiar faces, Darlene, clipboard in hand, walking the camp perimeter like she was checking off boxes at a rental site. I stitched the clips together, time-stamped, labeled, and geotagged. Melissa called again Monday morning. You planning to let them do it again this weekend? I was counting on it. Because I wasn't just building a case, I was setting a trap. I let it leak through a chatty neighbor who walked her dog near the creek. That I'd be away for the weekend helping a friend with a hunting cabin remodel. I left my truck in town and rode a friend's ATV in under cover of dusk, tucked deep in the trail line with a thermal scope and thermos. By nightfall Friday, they were back. 8 tents, 3 campfires. A portable speaker playing lo-fi beats into the forest. Darlene showed up late. This time with a local contractor in tow, pointing out trees like she was planning a build site. She had no idea I was watching from 50 yards away. That night, I sent the final video package to Melissa. She replied within the hour. We're greenlit. Operation scheduled. Pre-dawn Sunday. For the first time since this all started, I felt still again, not the uneasy stillness from before, the kind that told me something was coming. This was the stillness of control. I wasn't asking anymore. I wasn't warning them. I'd drawn the line. Now they were going to see it. And this time, it wasn't just me standing behind it. They didn't knock. Didn't ring the bell. Just slipped the envelope under my door like a coward's curse. Cream-colored. Embossed. HOA letterhead in gold leaf. Inside was a single-page notice from a local law firm I'd never heard of. Cease all interference with Legacy Pines HOA-sanctioned recreational activities or face legal action. They called it harassment. Claimed I'd violated community use expectations by disrupting member access. Cited fabricated bylaws. Suggested I was in breach of some mutual use agreement I'd never seen, let alone signed. Signed at the bottom, Howard D. Kellerman, Esquire. I read it twice, then once more, and I laughed. Because you only send threats like that when you've already lost control. But even a bluff can land if you let it. The next few days, the pressure came in waves. I received a courtesy violation for improper outdoor lighting. I don't have any lights outside my cabin. Then a noise complaint for chainsaw usage, which was interesting since I hadn't used one in over 2 weeks. They sent a notice about unauthorized vegetation management near the creek. That one almost made me spit my coffee. Meanwhile, my mailbox filled up with newsletters about shared ecological stewardship and ongoing recreational privileges. The messaging was clear. I was the outsider. I was the problem, and they were coming for me on paper, not in person. But it was a conversation with my neighbor, Janice, that brought the chill. She's lived a few plots over for nearly a decade. Keeps to herself, but always friendly in that wave from the porch way. I found her walking her retriever along the old fire road and stopped to say hello. "You should be careful," she said after a moment of hesitation. I overheard Darlene talking with the board. "They're thinking of filing for a prescriptive easement." The words dropped like a trapdoor. "If you don't know what that is, it's legally is for use it long enough, and you can claim it. Under certain state laws, if a group can prove they've used private land openly, continuously, and without topchin for a certain number of years, they can actually file for permanent legal access, or worse, ownership of that use. It's a long shot, but it's real. And in court, perception matters. If they could convince a judge that the community had always accessed my land, that I hadn't protested in time, they could take it. I didn't sleep well that night. Instead, I pulled every HOA communication, town hall document, and newsletter I'd collected since this began. I compared them against county records, timestamps from my trail cams, even satellite imagery from archived forestry files. I still had access to. That's when I found the crack. Their Greenbelt filing had a usage claim dating back 6 years. But the timestamp on the file they submitted the county was dated June of last year. And my trail cam footage. First sign of campers, mid-May of this year. They hadn't used the land long enough. Not even close. I dug deeper, went back through their newsletters. The first mention of community forest access appeared just 9 months ago. They were faking a timeline, trying to backdate their theft. But I had every timestamp, every motion sensor log, every aerial photo. Their case wasn't just weak, it was fabricated. Still, the clock was ticking. If I didn't move soon, they'd find some local judge too sympathetic or too busy to see the difference. The next phase wouldn't be a warning. It would be war. But it wouldn't come with fists. It would come with uniforms, citations, and the full authority of the state. And when it did, I'd make sure Darlene was front row to watch it all collapse. The moment peace came back to the woods, state forestry enforcement, one ranger barked as flashlights swept the ground. "Remain at your tents. Keep hands visible." Confusion, then panic. Zippers flying open, someone tripping over their own boots trying to lace them in a rush. A woman shrieked when an officer started tagging gear with zip ties. Within minutes, the entire camp was awake and surrounded. Melissa Tran was among them. Clipboard in hand, state badge visible, her tone flat and unimpressed. "Campfires built within 25 feet of a protected watershed," she called out. "Unauthorized motor vehicle activity on registered private property. Violation of sanitation code. Unpermitted group use. Trespass under state land registry article." She listed it all like a grocery receipt. Calm. Merciless. Then came the cherry on top. Darlene arrived at 6:12 a.m., storming down the trail in yoga pants and a Phyllis jacket, hair wild and rage barely contained. "What is this?" she demanded. "Who gave you the right?" Melissa cut her off without looking up. "Are you Miss Darlene Prescott, acting president of Legacy Pines Homeowners Association?" Darlene blinked. "Yes. And you're listed on 3 documents filed to the county that falsely designated private land as community use greenbelt. You facilitated multiple organized trespasses. You collected member fees for unlawful use of private property. Darlene froze. One of the rangers approached with a sealed evidence bag containing a printed campsite schedule, her name in the header. Ma'am, you may wish to consult an attorney before continuing this conversation. And just like that, her voice died in her throat. The campers were escorted out. Gear was logged, photographed, tagged for investigation. No arrests, not yet. But every face wore the weight of knowing this wasn't just a warning. This was a reckoning. By 7:23 a.m., the trail was clear. The tents were gone, the trash collected, and then came the final stroke. A county work crew arrived an hour later and drove a steel post into the ground just outside the HOA's clubhouse. Attached to it was a fresh white and red sign, "Private property, protected under State Code 8. All trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Melissa stood beside it, arms crossed, as one of the rangers snapped a photo. Darlene went from the clubhouse window, pale and motionless. I walked up after they left, ran my hand across the metal. It was cold, solid, but more than anything, it was quiet. The kind of quiet I came out here for. The kind of quiet that only returns when the land is finally heard. I didn't add music. Didn't add commentary. No slow-motion replays. No dramatic edits. Just the facts. I spliced together trail cam footage, ranger body cam audio, and my own time-stamped files from the last 3 months. Included quotes from the county land surveyor, overlay maps, screenshots of HOA newsletters, and footage of the rangers citing violations, while Darlene stammered in the background. It was 13 minutes long, titled simply, "How an HOA Tried to Steal My Forest and Got Caught on Camera." I uploaded it to a quiet YouTube channel I hadn't touched in years. Just a few old videos of backwoods hiking gear and tree ID tips. Nothing flashy. But by Sunday night, it had 90,000 views. By Monday morning, 1.2 million. It hit a nerve. Reddit picked it up first on r legal advice, then r petty revenge. By Monday evening, it was trending under HOA horror stories on Twitter. I gave no interviews. Just pinned a single comment beneath the video. This wasn't about winning, it was about protecting what was already mine. The emails started pouring in. Current and former homeowners dealing with HOA abuse, park rangers thanking me for putting a spotlight on unlawful land use, and even a few attorneys offering free services just in case. Then came the local news. Channel 9 ran a segment called "Backyard Battle: How One Man Stopped a Neighborhood Land Grab." They aired footage from the raid, blurred faces of course, but the scene spoke for itself. Campers scattering, rangers rolling in. That fresh boundary sign shining like a badge of truth. Within the week, the county launched an investigation into the Legacy Pines HOA. Turns out, the fraudulent Greenbelt filings weren't just illegal. They were linked to a pattern of minimal encroachments in nearby zones. The so-called eco-retreat scheme had potential financial fraud implications, tax evasion, improper permitting, even a possible case of falsifying government records. The district attorney's office opened a file, and then the real dominoes fell. 3 board members resigned within 48 hours. 2 others were served formal notices of inquiry. And Darlene, she held a press conference in front of the HOA clubhouse, tried to spin the narrative, called it a community misunderstanding, claimed I'd overreacted to a zoning error. But the video footage said otherwise. And the internet doesn't forget. Someone made a meme of her standing beside a campfire with the caption, "When you try to steal a forest, but the forest brings receipts." It got more likes than her entire HOA Facebook page. I never raised my voice, never knocked on doors or stirred up neighbors. All I did was document the truth. And once that truth had eyes, real eyes, millions of them, it spoke louder than I ever could. Out here in the woods, silence is sacred. But sometimes, you need the noise to remind the world what silence is worth. And this time, the woods didn't scream. They whispered back, on camera. Just so I'm clear, this association not only used the land without ownership but monetized it, misrepresented it in filings, and is now claiming reputational harm from the exposure of that activity. "Yes, Your Honor," Hale replied, straight-faced. The judge leaned back, removed her glasses. Case dismissed with prejudice. You could hear a pin drop. But she wasn't done. Additionally, I am referring the plaintiff's counsel to the state bar for review of their conduct in submitting this complaint. And I'm ordering all associated materials turned over to the county prosecutor for further investigation into fraudulent filings. Kellerman looked like someone had kicked the floor out from under him. The next week, Todd Wexler's real estate license was suspended pending a full ethics review. And Darlene, she was done. No more press conferences. No more meetings. Just a resignation email sent to the community listserv with the subject line, "Stepping aside for the good of the neighborhood." No one replied. They thought they owned the woods, thought they could bend paperwork into power and silence into submission. But it turns out, you can't steal what was never yours. And if you try, well, sometimes the truth doesn't just survive. Sometimes it wins. I still walk the creek every morning. Same trail, same boots, same cup of coffee warming my hands, while the mist rises off the water, like it remembers how to breathe again. But now there's a new sign nailed to the old cedar near the bend, the one that stood longer than I've been alive. No trespassing, no exceptions. Not even you, Steve. It's mostly a joke. Steve's the UPS guy. Great sense of humor, terrible sense of boundaries. But the point stands. The land is mine again. And this time, it's written in more than ink. After the court ruling, the county officially corrected the plat map. The fraudulent filings were voided, scrubbed from public record. The HOA, now under interim restructuring, was forced to issue a formal apology not because they wanted to, but because a class action lawsuit was brewing beneath the surface, like thunder. Their apology came printed and signed, stamped with as much humility as legal pressure can generate. I framed it, hung it in the outhouse, just above the toilet paper roll. As for the land itself, I finally installed fencing. Not barbed wire. Nothing ugly. Just clean, well-marked cedar post rails along the legal boundary. Respectful. Unmistakable. But I didn't close it off completely. There's a bench now. One I built myself and placed right by the creek, where the sunlight breaks through the canopy like stained glass around 8:42 every morning. It's not for guests. It's not for show. It's for me. A place to sit, not in defense, but in peace. One afternoon, a letter came in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. Just a familiar name in the corner. Margaret Dwyer, former HOA treasurer. Inside was one sentence. You reminded us that ownership isn't about control. It's about respect. No check, no excuse. Just that. And in that moment, I realized something. I never wanted to own the land to keep others out. I wanted to belong to it the way the creek belongs to the stone. Quietly, permanently, without apology. They thought I was just a man who liked his trees. But I'm not. I'm the one who listens to them. And when the trees finally spoke back, it wasn't with noise. It was with clarity. This place isn't just where I live. It's who I am. And now, finally, it's whole again. If you've ever had your peace threatened by paperwork and power games, you're not alone. Out here, we don't scream. We document. We defend. And we win with truth. This wasn't just about property lines. It was about drawing a line that meant something. Stick around. We've got more battles where justice walks softly, but carries a boundary survey.